We basically put a paywall on itch.io for the Windows version, which seems like a no-brainer of like, well, let's earn money. But longer term, having people engaging with the IP is more valuable than short-term profit.
Today I'm joined by an indie founder who took a game jam project to over 300 million downloads without VC funding.
These other rip-off versions of Baby in Yellow with hundreds of thousands of downloads, but the thing that really stung was those games were actually, they were making money. That was entirely just they were making profit off us.
We talk about what it takes to build a sustainable indie studio and how smart design made the Baby in Yellow perfect for YouTubers, and why distribution, not marketing, has driven their virality.
Because of the nature of going viral, you want as many eyes on something as possible. Retaining players and all those sorts of things, they are way, way easier problems to solve than getting players in the first place.
From someone who's built one of the most played horror games in the world, this episode's guest and CEO of Team Terrible, Greg Lee. Greg, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for coming. This is our second technically podcast. The other one was offline in format, Manchester, which was good, which was a nice CEO panel. And yeah, really looking forward to today. So for everyone at home, today's guest turned a game jam into a global phenomenon. We're talking about Team Terrible CEO Greg Lee, who took The Baby in Yellow to 300 plus million downloads, all without VC funding, so a true indie. And in this episode, we're going to unpack how he left Rockstar, built a sustainable indie business that also designed for virality. So if you want the blueprint for building games that also spread and kind of end up marketing themselves, then this podcast is for you. So Greg, my first question is kind of, if you take me back to like what triggered the first wave of downloads for the game. Do you remember that day?
Yeah, so I mean, it was a game jam, and generally game jams, they don't get a lot of players. Like, you'll get people who make game jams playing game jams, but like, they're rough around the edges. You only have 48, 72 hours. They're not good, but they have potential. But the thing that we found was we actually messed up. So we were meant to submit it to like a private submission group on itch.io, but we actually downloaded the latest version of Unreal, and because of that, we couldn't submit it on time. So we actually ended up not entering it into the competition we were meant to be entering, which is hilarious. So what we did in the end was we just threw it up online, and we thought, well, we made something, whatever, it goes up online. And we have a lot of other games up there. But what we noticed very quickly was it went from, like, a good game jam has like maybe 1,000, maybe 2,000 downloads, but a lot of them are sitting like 100. And this one, we came back after a week and had 5, 6, 7,000. And then we noticed it was YouTube, it was content creators, it was people, and they would hunt through places like itch to find weird games that other people hadn't played before. And I always assumed, although I've never actually confirmed this, but I always assumed it's a thing where a lot of these people, they were like not huge big players. Some of them were, but a lot of them were like quite small time content creators. And I think it's a way for them to have something like genuinely unique. Like, it's a new game, it's something that no one else has done. So whenever they post it on their channel, maybe some of these games do go big, they're one of the first videos. So it's kind of a way, sort of like a symbiosis of, if their game's popular with them, that helps us. So it's kind of like a nice back and forth. In fact, actually, funnily enough, some of the content creators who blew up, we were quite friendly with a lot of them now, and some of them mentioned to me that like their first big video was The Baby in Yellow back in the day, which obviously is a really nice thing because it's a bit of a back and forth where, for us, that's great because we got people eyes on the game, but also for them it's great because they got to expand their channel. And some of these channels now have like, I think there's a couple and a couple of million subscribers, and like back then, you know, I mean, this is 4 or 5 years ago now, a couple of those content creators had maybe tens of thousands. So it was that initial thing of, it started picking up and picking up and picking up, and it's the nature of it's the nature of going viral. The more people playing it, the faster it grows. It's sort of like there's like a critical mass you kind of hit. So that was what we noticed was, yeah, just people started playing the game, people were interested in the game, people wanted to talk about the game, and then in that returned to, well, we saw more and more downloads. One of the big things we actually saw, though, was the content creators was a big thing for us, but obviously we were still employed at the time, and so this game wasn't making us any money. It was a free game on itch, but we noticed that people started uploading the game on mostly Android, but a lot of mobile stores, and they were monetizing it. So they would just take our game, rip it off, do something pretty bad, but like along the same lines. And they would just upload it, and people would start downloading it because what we noticed was like any content creator that would upload a video gets 500,000 views. People watching it will just start searching for that game, just like, oh, I want to play that, I want to play that. And a lot of people play games mostly on their phones. Like a lot of YouTube content is watched on phones. It's why shorts and stuff exist. So a lot of people were instantly going to the place they download games, which is obviously mobile stores. We had no presence there. And then we noticed these games, and they were getting 100,000 downloads. And at this point in time, that's like double, triple what we were getting on the official version on PC. So it was around that time that we figured this is something special. Like we've got content creators. This is kind of blowing up. There's a lot of people. Like I can Google the baby in yellow, and there's 50, 60, 100 videos appearing. But there's also these other rip-off versions of the baby in yellow with hundreds of thousands of downloads. But the thing that really stung was those games were actually they were making money. Like obviously content creators get money out of advertisements and stuff, but again, it's not quite the same. There's a certain level of like that's almost marketing. You know, yes, they make money out of there for their monetization, but you're getting eyes on your game. Whereas these people, there was no benefit to us whatsoever. Like that was entirely just they were making profit off us. So the natural thing was like to combat that, we need to release a mobile version of this. So that was what we did, and that was the scary thing. Like once we did that, stuff really started blowing up because the PC one did well, but I think it was to do with the demographics. The mobile one really, really blew up, and it got to that point where suddenly this wasn't just a little game that we were making for fun in our free time. Like suddenly this was a revenue stream, and although at the start not a fantastic one, but we also had to learn a lot to do with like how monetization works and all this kind of stuff. But we firmly believed that we couldn't market this game because we don't have a marketing budget and we didn't have money to pump into that. So what we essentially decided to do was we make money in mobile. Let's just keep the PC version completely free. So download it on Edge, no cost, entirely free. And the reason for that is it makes it easier for content creators to download it and therefore more people to do it and then funnel more people back into the mobile. Because we noticed that when we turned on monetization, our downloads dropped to like a tenth. And
Wait,
it wasn't
wait a
making a
minute.
lot of money.
When you said turn on monetization, do you mean put a paywall behind the mobile game?
But on the PC game, so on itch. So we basically put a paywall on itch.io for the Windows version, which seems like a no-brainer of like, well, let's earn money. But we took the strategy of longer term having people engaging with the IP is more valuable than short-term profit. And
Mm.
because of the nature of going viral, you want as many eyes on something as possible. So we just viewed it as the state of like, we're just not going to make any money on PC. PC is basically there to just allow people to download it and upload YouTube videos, and we'll make all our money through mobile. Now, we have changed that now after several years, but for that first while, it was basically just like, get this in the hands of as many people as possible because monetization and like retaining players and all those sorts of things, they are way easier problems to solve than getting players in the first place. Like that's really hard to do. It's something that costs a lot of money. It's something that tons of companies exist to do so, and we had no capacity to do that. We couldn't compete against some of the heavy hitting mobile games. So our marketing budget, I used to joke, our marketing budget was all the money we didn't make on Windows. So
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know how much money we would have made, but like let's say for example it was 20 grand or whatever, like that was our marketing budget. So yeah, like it was literally just get it into the hands as many people as possible. The other problems have solved themselves out. Like I mean, if you have a player base, that's nearly always the biggest problem. Like everyone that I speak to owns other studios is just getting a sizable amount of people to care about your name because we viewed this as this has the potential to go across multiple products. Like this could be something we could work on. We could then do spin-offs. We could then do other IPs. It's something that we are certain other IPs, other games based on the same IP. It was something that we were really, really passionate about. And this community started developing as well. We started getting fan art. We started getting people making Discord groups. We started getting loads of emails. A lot of our demographics is sort of like teenagers. So you get emails from individual players, but we also got a lot of emails from like parents of like kids who were like 12 or 13, basically saying like how much their son or daughter loved the game. And so we were just like, well, cool. We just need to get this out there as much as possible. And that was always the attitude we took. Now we had to switch our strategy later on because as we hit like sort of 200 million downloads, we used to sort of like joke that it was like, right, we can tick the box of we have players. I've worked on bigger games that had less players, that had massive budgets. So getting that number of players is like astronomical to me. Like we never expected. Like I remember whenever we first hit 1 million downloads, and I genuinely was like, right, that's it. We've achieved something here. After we got past 100 million downloads, it kind of got to the point where it was meaningless. Like there were
Yeah,
made up
number go
numbers.
up.
Yeah, yeah. It was like what's the difference between 100 million and 110 million? Like I already can't visualize what 100 million people is. There's a weird thing because it's difficult to like view that number in your head. Like it's not a normal number. It's so big. There's a friend of mine at one point did some like napkin math. And I can't remember exactly what it was, but it was along the lines of like 1 in 37 people on the planet have played your game. And I was just like, that's mental. And he's like, think of like, like a school classroom or something like that. Like, usually about 30, 40 people. It's like one of those people have played your game. And I was like, that is nuts to think about. I haven't redone the napkin math on our latest numbers, but it would probably be something similar to that. So yeah, I mean that was the whole thing of us just like make the game as accessible as possible. We don't have the ability to market this, so we're going to rely entirely on it being viral and then figure out monetization later on, which is like that's basically where we are now. So a bit unconventional, I guess, but
Very unconventional, Greg. Like it's so cool. I remember seeing a short because we had a meeting booked for London in January.
mhm.
And I was like, ah, cool, Team Terrible. And then I searched the game and I was like, why has it got 30 million? I was like, 100 plus million? And then I was like, searching the game on YouTube. And there was like a short with hundreds of millions of views. I was like, what is happening right now? And then I asked you in person and you kind of told me what happened here. So very interesting. And I think there's a lot of lessons here for everyone at home. So what I want to do is a bit of a quick zoom out. And
Mhm.
we've got the game jam, we've got all the distribution, we've got the games. That was a few years ago, right? So where are we now? And what I want to talk about in the podcast is kind of like what we've done to get to that point and the lessons we learned along the way. So could you paint a picture of Team Terrible as a studio now? How does it look?
I mean now we have different problems. Like I think every studio's got problems. You know what I mean? Like, and ours aren't major ones because, like I said, we have like an IP that's doing well, but there's obviously a lot of problems. And one of the big ones is like me and Aaron, who's is the co-founder of Team Terrible, is like us adapting to the position we're in because 4 years ago it was like me and him in our bedrooms. It was like end of COVID. We were just making a game. We just quit our jobs. It was all like a bit haphazard, I guess. Whereas now, there's 12 of us. We have an office space, and we're still working on the Baby in Yellow because we've been continually sort of like improving it, and we're still in early access on Steam now, which we moved over from Itch, and we're a lot more like a real company. Like for a very long time, it sort of felt like it was just two friends kind of making stuff together, and then suddenly we had to sort of take stuff seriously. And um, as I said, like the sort of problems and stuff that we have are things like, you know, what the hell is HR? Oh no, we've got to sort of this thing, and it's all those sort of little bits and pieces of like running a business that whenever you're making games initially, you don't think about. Like whenever we made that game, I wasn't thinking about running a studio, or I wasn't thinking about porting to mobile or all the technical constraints. All I was thinking was like, this is a cool idea. So I guess these days we have a lot more of like a big picture kind of focus compared to where we used to, whereas it used to be very, very simple. But one of the things I will say is like it's still an attitude that we want to instill within the studio. Like we don't know exactly what our next product's going to be, although we have a whole bunch of ideas. But no matter what it is, we're definitely going to do something similar. Like I'm not a fan of locking yourselves in a room for 2 or 3 years working on a product and then shipping it and finding out your product's not very, very good. Like I think that with this day and age, with how fast things move and how accessible and how interconnected everyone is, getting stuff out early is the absolute key. And you will be amazed what people will look past if the game is good. Like if the game is good, people will look past bugs, they will look past bad art, they will look past janky parts if the game is actually fun. I mean, even look at some of the other biggest games that have blown up over the past while. Like I remember when PUBG came out, and PUBG at one point was like the most played game on Steam by a huge mile, and it was really buggy. But it didn't matter because if the game is genuinely good, people don't care. And I think that's something that people struggle with a bit, where there are games that are out and they have incredible art, and that's sort of what carries the game. And there are games out there that are like incredible technological jumps, and that's really impressive. But nearly all the games that come out that have done incredibly well are enjoyable to play. They're just fun experiences. Just point to like what's come out recently, like Balatro, even things like Schedule One that blew up on Steam recently. They're just really fun experiences, and I think that that's what we want to do is we want to work on more fun experiences, and it's sort of a thing of right now we're a bit more serious. We're sort of like focusing on the product and all these sort of big boy business things, but at the end of the day, we're still indie developers and we still love game jams and we still love making cool stuff together. And I think if we lost that, we would lose a huge part of like what made us successful in the first place. So yeah, I don't know what our next product's going to be or what we're going to work on next, but I don't want to lose that. I don't want to become super corporate. I mean, it was one of the reasons why we quit and made our own studio is we never wanted to be super corporate because I think that takes out a lot of the passion, and I also think it can kind of kill a lot of the creativity in a game. Not always. There are some bigger corporate companies that make incredible games, but for me, I always love those weird little. It's like someone who's really into film. They always watch bizarre stuff. They don't watch Hollywood. I kind of feel like I'm like that with games. Like I just love weird indie stuff. I'm not really big into the Hollywood blockbusters of games as such.
Then it's
Um,
different, right? Like by default, it will become different. And I feel like if there's anything your game, it's different, right? And
yeah,
like the games you mentioned, Balatro, Schedule One, different. Each of them, like they're different. Um, I was on LinkedIn this morning and I saw a post. Someone said a game on Roblox got 1.2 million concurrent players. Something stupid, which is like more than like 10 times more than Fortnite Battle Royale right now, which is like 100,000 players, and it's a Roblox game. And I was just thinking about the parallel here with your game, where you got all this, I guess, distribution, right? Like it's easy, quick, and a younger audience. Then you get all this things on the back end where you get all these extra players and all that jazz, and it's so important. Like I'm thinking of all this people I'm speaking to, like founders, and like you said, they're putting all this effort into the product. But like, is it fair to say that distribution is kind of everything with the game at this point?
yeah. I mean, there's a weird thing where like art. And although I'm not a UX guy, like I have an understanding of UX, and there's a sort of like fundamental concept in things like UX, which is like number of clicks or number of button presses, like in your product. If you're designing like a menu or a website, you want the players to get, or not the players, sorry. You can tell I'm a game developer. I refer to everyone as players, not users, but you want the user to get from the loading page to the important stuff in as few clicks as possible. And there's like statistics around like for every click you add, you will lose a certain percentage of people engaging with it because there's a lot of distractions these days. There's a lot of stuff on your phone, there's a lot of stuff on the internet, and for us, competing with some of those big guys was so difficult because they have budgets and incredibly talented people working on huge IPs. So just make it as easy as possible for everything that we had in our game that like detracted or took away for that or made it a little bit harder to get hold of. That was like a huge downside for us. So like distribution, getting the stuff out there, like it is important because everything you put up that's a hurdle, like I said, we put up a paywall, which is obviously that is how companies make revenue. It's not a bad thing, but that was just a hurdle. And even in the game, like originally when the game came out, even the menus and stuff to get you into the game, it was really minimalist. It was literally just like download it, you're in the game. Because once people got into the game, they enjoyed it and they liked it. But anything that could stop that coming up to it was just like that was an obstacle. That was an obstacle to getting a player to where we wanted it to be. Um, so it's a weird one. To be honest, there's like I've talked about this with a lot of people because at the end of the day, we got very, very fortunate and very, very lucky with this stuff. But I have a sort of little thing about like how I look to luck. Like I do think luck is always an element, but I always think of like effort to me as like rolling dice. So like someone could roll a dice and instantly roll a six. You get people like that, they are just born lucky. They just have stuff. They just, they're born into money or whatever, and they have a six straight off the bat. You get other people who work their entire life in incredible things and they could roll 20 dice and not get a single six. That also happens. So to me, effort and trying out things is just adding more dice. And for us, we made I don't even know how many game jams at this point, but somewhere between 20, or sorry, somewhere between 30 and 40. I think Aaron's even done more for us, but to me, like I'm not saying, oh, on your 35th game jam, it's going to go viral because it only takes 35. Like I have no idea. Your second game jam could go viral. You could do 200 game jams and none of them go viral, but you have to keep trying stuff out. You have to keep doing stuff. And it's what I said earlier on about I think it's a big mistake for companies to sort of sit and work on a product for several years without sharing it, because there's a huge risk of that's a huge amount of investment, that's a huge amount of manpower that you're now wasting, and you could share that and it could just not work. And there could be a cool little thing that you're working on that you share, and suddenly it just resonates with people. And I think that's the big thing is like once something resonates with people, it's identifying that really fast and capitalizing on it. Like that to me is what luck is. It's like getting very, very fortunate with an amount of effort. And then the flip side is identifying success and making sure you don't let it slip through your grasp. Because that was like one of the big things for us was like we saw it was popular on mobile. Cool. Well, we can't do this part time anymore. So we had to like quit and do it. Like that was it. It was like, we can't work full time jobs and also do this. This might be our only chance. Like we might never ever get something of this nature again. So we just have to throw ourselves into it. And worst comes to worst, we do it, we go bankrupt, then we go back and we get another job. But I would rather that than lying at home every night thinking, what if I did quit? You know what I mean? I would rather do it and feel than wonder what if. Because I think that would genuinely haunt me. I mean, now looking back, if I knew this, I would be obviously incredibly sad. But back then, I didn't realize this level of success. Like, we used to joke that by this stage, we might have like 4 employees. And obviously, like I said, we're on 12 now. And it's just a very, very different state. It's been a weird journey. Like it's been cool. It's been exciting, but I think it's just like sticking to like some fundamental principles of like things that you've learned and like certain like ideologies that you believe in. I think is like a really really important thing, and I want to make sure that even though we have grown and we're not the two guys in our rooms anymore, we still have the same like vibes. Like there's still a same like underlying what we believe in to make a product good, what we believe in to like what players want. I'm also not a big fan of like over monetizing, I guess would be a good way to put it. Um, Whenever we release the game as sort of part of our ethos of making the game as easy to play as possible, we didn't put a lot of adverts in the game. And we actually minimized it. Basically, we sort of worked out of like what's the least we can get away with. And one of the big things that we get commented on a lot, now don't get me wrong, people still complain there's ads in the game because it's a free game, there's going to be adverts. But I've played a lot of free mobile games over the past 5 years, looking at peers, looking at what the people are doing, and we are very generous when it comes to like not showing ads too much. And we definitely could have increased that and probably made more money. But one of the big reasons that I think it was successful and people come back and play it and tell their friends about it is it's easy. There's not constant interruptions. You are making that thing. It's not quite distribution, but it's the same kind of thing of it's a distraction to take the player out. Every time there's an advert, that's a chance a player might quit. That's a chance a player might not see more of it. And there's so much stuff in the game to see that having a player quit early meant that wasn't a fan. Whereas you keep the player in the game by not overloading them with ads, that person could turn into a fan. That person could turn into like a proper community member, really, really engaging with it. So it's a tricky balance of like the artist in me wanting everyone to experience this incredible experience and here's my story and me and Aaron talking about all these ideas we want to share and I have staff members with mortgages and I need to pay them. So there's like a weird balance and it's trying to find that line. And I generally lean more towards creating a good product than I do trying to monetize. But we have to be careful with that because those happy ideologies only go so far. Like there is a realistic aspect to this. We are running a business. We need to make money. We need to make revenue. So to me, it's just keeping those ideas alive and being aware of them and being aware of where we came from. I don't want to turn into one of those gambling games that's all about that's all it is because to me that's borderline like abusing your player base where it's driving on addiction and stuff, whereas we want to make something good and reasonable that people engage with. So yeah, it's tricky because there's like a lot of things I'm learning over time trying to like handle all this stuff, and there's a lot of things that we definitely did wrong and there's a lot of things that we definitely misunderstood at the time. But looking back, I don't think there's anything that was like a huge failure. And I think a big part of that was doing what we felt was the correct thing to do and sort of doing what we felt was like who we were as a team. And I think that's like a really, really big part of it.
100%. The long-term mindset is coming through a lot here, especially when you mentioned about like luck. which I really resonate with. I write about luck, and it's like if you fish with a very tiny net, you could catch the fish first try, and you are lucky. But if you cast a bigger net and you fish regardless, even if the weather's shit, even if the market has so many competitors, eventually you're going to hit the big fish. And like when you mentioned the amount of game jams you've done, it's like over 40 combined, like he starts to put everything into perspective, right? He didn't just like go and do a game jam as a weekend treat at Rockstar and then it ended up being a hit and then you just kind of waddled your way through. There's a lot of things that happened behind the scenes for us to get to this part. And then again, I just love hearing the when the game was doing well, you could have just put ads on it, and then actually that would have killed the studio, maybe, like potentially,
Yeah,
right? Like they could have just cut distribution right there, and we wouldn't be having this conversation. But you again had the long term mindset and trying to get fans, not just customers, because the fans will then produce an environment where the symptom will probably be more money, right?
yeah,
So
and it's the thing as well. It's like every person that downloaded the game and played the game, like we found like word of mouth was a really big one for us, and it's such a terrible marketing strategy because you can't really control it. Like it's not one
well,
that
you
you
did.
can.
I
Well,
count you in that.
yeah.
You did, right? You made it very easy to play,
I
and you
guess,
made
I
sure
guess.
people experience the game to talk to their friends. Like you can control the experience to facilitate more word of mouth. But yeah, you can't put money in, get word of mouth out.
You're right. You're right. It's not something that is like as much of a one to one. Like you can't do like Facebook advertising where you get like an analytic dashboard. You can't get that with word of mouth. But you're right. That was the kind of thing that we were leaning on. Was like if someone tells someone about this, we want them to turn around and say they had a great experience. It was a really cool game. We don't want them to say it was full of adverts. It really annoyed me. I really liked the game, but it was full of adverts. Anything negative like that. And it's like that was like one of the biggest things that like really spread for us was that word of mouth. Like a lot of people played the game because they saw a content creator, but a lot of
How do you know that?
well, because they would tell us. So there's a lot of people that
Oh,
would be like one of the amazing things. I had an incredible experience at a wedding a few years back. So my girlfriend was the maid of honor, and she was away doing photos or something. So I was at this table with a group of strangers, and I started chatting away to them. And it was a family, and the dad was roughly the same age as me, and we started bantering and chatting. As soon as I mentioned that I made video games, he obviously wants to know more. He's a really big gamer himself, talking about the stuff and blah blah blah. And he heard about some of the games I've worked on in the past, got really excited, asked me what I'm doing at the moment, and I mentioned Baby in Yellow, and he was like, "Okay, never heard of it." Most people our age haven't heard of it. Like I feel very old in our Discord server because they're all posting memes that I don't understand. Like I've never felt so out of touch. But anyway, he I actually says that well your two daughters might actually know the game more than me. And he had two daughters, one about 16, 17, and one maybe about 14 or something like that. And the older one, no idea. Younger one lost her mind. Like absolutely lost her mind because she'd watched tons of content creators play the games. She knew these content creators, but she'd also talked about it, even to the point where towards the end of the night, there was her and maybe 8 other kids, and they got an iPad from somewhere. I have no idea where, and they were all playing the Baby in Yellow. And it's because whenever she met me, she got really excited about it. She phoned her friends to tell them that they were actually almost more excited about the content creators because she was asking me questions about the content creators, and I can't remember which one, but there was one of them. He apparently says he's colorblind or something like that. And she said, "Is he really colorblind?" And I was like, "I don't know. I'll ask him." So I emailed him, and he emailed me back, and he was like, "Yeah, I'm red green colorblind." And she was just blown away that I could do this to this like you know what I mean? It's like me growing up like watching TV. It's the equivalent of that. It's just such a huge part of like life and culture. But anyway, like they found this iPad, and suddenly there was this group of like whatever 10 kids all sitting around playing the Baby in Yellow together because she got so excited about it. She started telling other kids that were there who'd never heard of it. And then I was just this weird thing where sort of in the background, like I'm out, I'm meeting people. I didn't know a lot of people at this wedding because it's more like my partner's kind of friends. So I was out meeting people and like having a few drinks and enjoying myself. And then every once in a while, I would just glance over at these like group of kids all playing my game, like in this wedding. It was very, very strange to see. But I've had other friends as well where one of my friends discovered it when they were on holiday. Sorry, one of my friend's kids discovered it when they were on holiday. And I think it was through someone they met when they were out there. So they were at some sort of resort, and one of the other kids was playing Baby in Yellow. And then he came home that night and was playing Baby in Yellow in the hotel room. And my friend, his dad, was like, "Where did you get that? That's my friend's game." I think he actually said, "You're too young to be playing that because it's like a horror game." And he was like, "Oh, one of the guys or whatever, one of the other kids here showed it to me." So there is a lot of these sort of like they're anecdotal. So obviously you've got to take with a pinch of salt. But there's a lot of these stories sort of pop up where people very organically find out about the game. And while there are a bunch of my friends who have like kids, there's also a bunch of my friends who also play it themselves as well. Those ones that I can directly say like, "Oh, I told them." But there's also a lot of people that will randomly be like, "Huh, yeah, my kids play your game," or "Yeah, my friend plays your game," and it is just like very, very organic. So I think it's a weird mixture of that content creator thing, but it's also that thing of it's a very human thing to want to share experiences with each other, and creating something that people resonate with means they want to share it with others. I mean, that's essentially what content creation is. That's what Let's Plays are, just on a slightly bigger scale. But it's the equivalent of me finding a cool piece of music and wanting to tell you about it because it's something I want to share with you. And it's very humbling and it's very kind of scary to sort of be part of almost like the zeitgeist with that, where we've become like a part of culture. Like another one as well is on our Discord. Like I said, there's a lot of teenagers on there that I struggle to understand because they talk strange, but they post a lot of really cool fan art. And our community manager, she would quite often share fan art with me and other members of the team. And there has been like school textbooks vandalized with iconography from our game, which is like I remember doing that as a kid. I remember drawing like the Batman logo or like Spider-Man's mask in textbooks, which I'm not saying is a good thing. You shouldn't vandalize, but I remember doing that as a kid. And it's weird now that there's kids doing the same thing, but doing things with like symbols or characters or stuff from something that I created. And that was like such a minor thing, but that was like a really special moment for me where it was kind of like I could put myself in the footsteps of them, sort of looking at the IPs and the characters and the stories that I cared about. And there's obviously a certain demographic or there's a certain age group that have the same feelings with this. And when you mentioned the whole looking forward thing, that was like a big part of what we're trying to do is getting your IP to be popular solves so many problems long term. Like we used to
Yeah.
joke, it's a little bit like killing the golden goose. When do you cash out? Because the more you get this accessible, the more you have more players engaging with it, the bigger it gets, the more value you'll be able to extract down the road. Versus if we
Mm.
cashed out really
Yeah, like
early,
you're depositing into your goodwill bank and it's
exactly.
getting compound interest, and you're like, I don't want to take.
Well, it's like even like I said, like the itch.io demo, like we could have put that as premium and got like a tenth of the downloads, but then that's a tenth less content creator videos, and then that's a tenth less, but it's kind of like exponential, like these sorts of
Yeah, 100%.
things.
It's logarithmic. That's the word.
Yeah, I
Like if you
think
got,
that's what it is.
yeah, if you got 10 times less downloads and that's 10 times less creators, well, the impact of those creators is also 10 times less, like a download. So yeah, it's like what there's a few things you mentioned there which are really cool. Um, like the wedding example is amazing because that wouldn't work if it's a game that isn't easy to get into
Yeah,
and also actually fun. And then you mentioned the icon stuff. I don't want to become that podcast host who just repeats what you says, but like I have to mention a couple of things you said here because I think they're really cool. The fact that they're drawing icons on a book. Like I read a Reddit post because like, okay, what's the lore of Baby in Yellow? I might need to know. And there's literally an essay. I was like scanning it. It's like based in the Cthulhu universe, and then like the babysitters have this weird kind of like there's rabbits and there's hunters. Like I didn't go too deep into it, but like there's souls involved, loads of stuff. And I can imagine me going really deep into that and like, ooh, I know something that they don't know. Like Five Nights at Freddy's examples, right? I
yeah.
don't know if you've got kind of. Also, I wanted to ask you. Actually, I'm going to ask you. Who came up with the lore? Is it you and the co-founder?
Oh,
Who's
that's
writing all that stuff?
so that's actually quite an interesting one. So it actually goes the whole way back to the game jam. So the game jam was made by myself, my co-founder, and one other guy who actually years later came to work and now works with us, which is
Oh,
cool. But the three of us did the game jam together, and the theme of the game jam. So game jams quite often have a theme, and it's sort of just to sort of vaguely guide you or like put up restrictions. And the theme was out of control. We had a friend who just had a baby, and was constantly moaning about like how his life is chaos and he has no say on anything that happens anymore. So kind of as a way to like poke fun of him, we were like, well, let's just do like a kid, but like ramp it up. And originally it was less horror and it was like a sort of Jack thing from The Incredibles, where it's like a super baby, but like an uncontrollable baby. Like, what would a baby with superpowers be like? And we played around with it, and it was nice, but it was like it just didn't have something that really captured you. And it was the other guy, so it wasn't Aaron or myself. It was the other guy who was working on this, a guy called Ross, and he's very well read, really into a lot of like different authors and stories, particularly a lot of dark stuff, weird stuff. Like he's just a very interesting guy to talk to. But he'd read a book called The King in Yellow, which is I mean, it's reasonably well known amongst people who like sort of weird culty Lovecraftian stuff. So it's not actually a Lovecraftian book, but it's sort of lumped together as like a Lovecraftian esque kind of thing. And it's about this whole sort of like king that lives in another dimension, and sort of like it's very sort of just Lovecraftian, like he's influencing people in our world and they're going crazy and all this kind of stuff. And it was sort of he mentioned this stuff. I was like, that's an interesting thing to play on. Like, what if we change this to be like, rather than it being like a superhero, and what would a superhero be like as a baby? Like, well, what if it's like a Lovecraftian monster? Like, what would a Lovecraftian monster be like as a baby? I always use the kind of analogy of like, the biggest, toughest UFC fighter in the world at one point was literally a helpless baby. So what if we took the idea of like an unstoppable monster from another world? Well, what would they be like as a helpless baby? Like, so that was the kind of idea that we played with. So the book is like in the Creative Commons, so it's over like 100 years old. So it's like it's free to use and it's free to reference. So we took that as a sort of like baseline, but then built our own lore on top of it. So there's certain aspects of it that we use. A lot of it's very open to interpretation, I would say. And we took aspects of it that we liked, but then we started developing our own mythos and our own sort of ideas around that. But funnily, actually, you mentioned about the watching, like reading the Reddit post and seeing an essay. There's a weird mixture of things, and this is also a thing to do with like understanding your player base, which is like a lot of people who play the game just want to have a scary game, or they just want to mess around with a ragdoll baby because it's funny and they want to do amusing stuff, and that's totally cool. But there's a lot of people who play the game who are really into the lore. Like Five Nights at Freddy's had the similar kind of thing where they want to deep dive, they want to understand, they come up with theories. They're really interested in like specifically what is happening in this world, what is happening to the players. And because of that, we have to balance a fine line where you have to cater to both, and they're very different groups. So you have to cater towards, it needs to be fun, it needs to have nice, silly moments, it needs to have scary moments, it needs to be accessible, but it also needs to have depth. And that was definitely something that we always sort of talk about, this idea of like primary and secondary information. Like primary information is the door is locked, you need a key. And secondary information was like a wizard used to live here. Do you know, it's stuff that you don't actually need to progress in the game, but for people who do care, they'll go and find out more. So we ended up having to have this sort of like double layer approach where there's the game, it's nice, it's fun, it's simple, and then underneath that, there's more if you need it. So if you want to find out more, you can do so, and you can dig a little bit deeper. So it was a tricky one, like trying to like balance that thing of some people don't care. Some people don't care about story. Some people just skip every cutscene, and that's totally okay. I have done that in certain games. There's been games I've played that I've loved, and I've got to a point where like I don't really care about the story anymore. I just want to get back into the cool combat, or I just want to go and explore the space. And it's a totally valid way to play. It's the exciting thing about games where it's like non-linear storytelling. You don't have control over the camera. You don't have control over what the main character does. So how do you ensure that the story is still told, even when people are doing the wrong things as such? I wouldn't say wrong. Wrong's not the right word. Um, Different things, creative things, than what you originally intended, which is definitely interesting. I feel like I've just gone on a tangent there, but I hope it was interesting.
It is. I'm brought up the YouTube search results for Baby in Yellow, and it's ridiculous because I was trying to check. I wonder if most of the videos are based on like the story and the theory, or like the horror, and it's a bit of both. I'm
It
going to
is.
share my screen.
There's a nice
It's like,
mixture.
hopefully we get this on the podcast, but for everyone listening, I'm on YouTube. I just searched Baby in Yellow videos, and then you got streams, 5 million from a year ago, 1.8 million from 8 months ago. You got animations. You got people who just play the game.
Yeah.
But this is crazy because you got Markiplier, Baby in Yellow, full update, 45-minute video. So I actually checked if the Game Theorist made a video, who I knew, but they made that 4 years ago. But then there's still all this content being created. So there's content about him being terrifying, but then there was videos about like all the endings
Yeah.
of the game. So like I
There,
know for a fact this game hasn't had a bajillion hours building lore like RuneScape. There's not like 1,000 different quests, but you've given enough where another person who's a creator could go and run with it, and then, like you say, create all this content.
there's an amazing thing. Like, if you just stop scrolling there, there's like a really really good example of like what this game kind of is, where it's like that video second from the top, like Baby in Yellow scares my golden doodle puppy, whatever the frig that is, but it's like horror, terrifying, blah 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 blah. But then the video directly below that is just like, oh, this is some weird stuff, man. There's so many things. But the one below that is like the BB in Yellow wearing like a bunch of top hats, and it's all silly. So there's this weird thing where it's like we try not to take ourselves too seriously as well. I think at the end of the day, it needs to be fun, it needs to be engaging. And yes, there are serious aspects to it, but we're not going to shy away from the fact that parts of the game are just silly and fun. And we actually find an interesting part. And this was like, I wish I knew this intentionally, because I would be so much smarter than like what I actually am. But a lot of horror games have this weird thing where you have to escape from a monster or whatever the hell it is, and sometimes maybe you have to look after someone, like someone that there was like there's a friend or
Hmm.
an ally or someone you've got to care for. And in our game, we did this weird thing where we like merged them. Like the thing you're looking after is also the grenade that's about to go off, and we
Hmm.
wanted to like juxtaposition a lot of like the serious aspects of it with being like, well, what if whenever he's angry at you and pissed off at you and trying to kill you, he's like horrible, and we lean into the horror. But then when you're looking after him, it's more like the comedy side of things. And then there's a nice thing of like catching players like off guard, where like, is it silly or is it serious? And it's a nice thing sort of playing between those and dancing between those different lines. Which I find really, really interesting, because there's the dumbest stuff we talk about like, we're looking through 9 different fart noises to pick which one's good. But then the next meeting is us sitting down talking about like the lore of how the different dimensions interact with each other, and like all this, like it's such a bizarre game where it has those kind of like differences. Um but as you can see, that there's a nice mix of like how people engage with the game. It's not just all horror, it's not just all silly, it's not just all whatever. Like there's a nice mix. But yeah, the amount of content that's been created from it, like there's been music videos, there's been animations. The fan art is incredible. Like the fan art is some of the coolest stuff I've seen. There was a girl apparently went to her high school graduation dressed as one of the characters, which I thought was insane, but also like kind of cool. Like from my point of view, like I think you shouldn't. People have tattoos of it as well, which I think is crazy, because
I'm starting to think out loud now. Like Minecraft, right?
yeah,
Movie came out, blown everything over, went crazy. I went to McDonald's and actually went and bought some shit related to McDonald's.
yeah,
So I got this stuff just to decorate the mic. And then, funny enough, on the weekend, what I went and did? I was like, what's happening in Minecraft YouTube world? And I shouldn't have done that because I went down a rabbit hole.
yeah,
Started watching about SMP lifesteal, and this ties back to this game because the people who consume Minecraft content, I'm guessing, start off young-ish. So we're talking teens. But like I've played Minecraft when I was teen. Every now and then I'll come back and watch some content because the people creating that content tend to be adults.
yeah,
And now I'm looking at this in the lens of Baby in Yellow. Because so much consumption is happening, like there's so much attention going to the game, then the creator does put in the effort to make content about said game. So like Markiplier literally can only upload so many videos, but he chose Baby in Yellow for one of them. He only did that in my head because either the game's interesting, but also there was already attention.
yes,
So like I'm wondering now, like if for people listening, like if your game can be played by young folk, think Roblox age or like the game that we have here, that actually allows for so many different things. Because then you got not only more of them because they tend to play games, but also they have more time. So
yeah.
they can do all this theory crafting, they can do all this word of mouth stuff. And then as they grow up, hopefully they grow up with you as the studio, and then boom, you've got a forever studio in terms of like an audience. Like I'm getting quite hyped talking about it because I'm like, wait a minute, we've got hundreds of millions of players. You've got their details in some sort if they're on the Play Store. Like, I was actually quite shocked, thinking in my head, like, when you said you are making your next product, I thought you would say, oh yeah, the next Baby in Yellow, but not necessarily from what I'm hearing.
I mean, our attitude is always try some stuff out. We're not going to go away and make something for a year or two. Like I said, we're going to try out some stuff. I have
So
opinions.
will it be in the same universe?
I think so, but I wouldn't say
It's,
definitely.
the fact that it's not 100% to
Yeah.
me is like, whoa.
Well,
Like,
the other thing as well is like we've been working on this game for quite a while, and like we're fortunate enough to have like a relatively successful studio. So if after this game comes out and we just spend 3 months, 6 months, and we just make a bunch of stuff that's not Baby and Yellow to give everyone a palate cleanser, to give everyone a break, to let a couple of people stretch their legs and do a bunch of stuff where they've kind of
you
missed
mean
you,
internally now, yeah?
we'll definitely release it. Like, what's the downside? Like, it comes out and it falls down, or who cares?
No, sorry, I meant like you mean
Yeah,
stretch
yeah,
their
yeah,
legs,
yeah, yeah.
not
Like,
the players, but like, yeah, because
yeah, yeah,
the
yeah.
thing
Us.
that a lot of people don't understand, because mind you, I'm putting Baby in Yellow in this podcast title. We're going to get some players listen to this, which isn't that common. So welcome everyone who's more of a gamer rather than the game dev. But like a lot of gamers don't know that game dev fatigue is a thing, right? Like playing, or I guess creating the same game for X amount of time. Like I had this I used to place Unity developers on jobs, and one of the most important thing for them was the project. Like, is it an interesting project, or will I gouge my eyes out? And that's more important than money. So, like, after a certain point, like you need to be enjoying what you're playing. I'm not saying that the team doesn't necessarily enjoy it, but like you said, palate cleanser. I can imagine that is a bit of a respite as well when you're working on different titles.
Oh, 100%. And it's like, I don't think there's anyone in the studio right now that's like miserable by any means, but like, would anyone say no if I said, hey, let's just make something else for a month? Probably not, just because it's nice. It's nice to do different things.
Novel.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And the thing is, as well, with game development is parts of it are more fun than others. Like concepting and sort of coming up with ideas can be really, really, really fun if they work. If they don't work, it's awful. Working in the middle of the game is generally one of the best bits when everyone kind of knows what they're doing. There's a good direction. There's a lot of like oversight. There's a lot of like drive. And at that point, it's just kind of like go do what you do best. And that's a really fun part. But then the end nearly always sucks quite a lot as well because it's usually bug fixes. It's cutting stuff that you know you're not going to be able to make for release because we need to release in 2 months or whatever it is, and we don't have time to do X, Y, and Z. So that gets cut. So there's definitely like aspects of it where it comes up and comes down. And like I personally have felt it. I know most of the people on my team have at some point. I'm not saying most, everyone on my team at some point has had highs and lows where aspects of game development is like going better. Sometimes it's not going as well. But we try as best we can to sort of like allow people to express themselves, and we want to try and hire people that like are self motivated and want to do different stuff. And as much as whenever we first started with me and Aaron, it was like we did everything ourselves. Like both of us did design. Aaron is a programmer, and my background was art, but it meant that we had to both do a bunch of other stuff. Where like I was also having to do like audio because we didn't have an audio person back then, you know, or there'd be random bits and pieces we just had to throw together. Whereas now we're not like hyper specialized. Everyone kind of is involved in design in some aspect, although I generally sort of drive that. But like if someone turned around to me and was like, I want to go and try and make this sound effect, or I'm going to go and try and make this little thing, it's like generally, assuming they're not behind on their work or something important, it's I don't mind people playing around, trying out stuff. Like I want people to be able to like have a little bit of freedom in what they do, so that they're not entirely just in a box. It was one of the big reasons that I struggled working in larger studios was I had this sort of game jam attitude where I like to be a generalist. And I was shouted at by a couple of leads where they were like, no, 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 you need to specialize. And I was like, I absolutely refuse to specialize. So I would do a little bit of animation. I would do a little bit of audio. I mean, it was mostly art, but I would do a little, dabble in other things. But even within art, like, are you a character artist? Are you an environment artist? You know, are you a 2D artist? There's all these things. And I just refuse to be any of them because for me, if I just generally leaned into like levels and environments and stuff, but if that was all I did all day, every day, I suddenly didn't feel like I was a game dev. I felt like I was an environment artist. I want to work with game devs. Like I want to work with people that care about making games. I think it's okay to enjoy working in big companies and to be super passionate about that aspect of your job, but that's not what I got out of making games. Like I wanted to be there because I wanted to make games, not make art, if that makes sense. Like I wanted to make my art as good as possible, but the art was a tool to make a game. Um, and those are the people we want to hire and stuff. So like when it comes to like taking a break and doing a palette cleanser, like I want people to screw it. Do you want to do some VO writing for 6 months or something? Absolutely. Like, I think everyone when the game comes out will deserve a break. And as long as it's constructive and they can justify it to me, like I want people to have the freedom to sort of be able to mess around, try some stuff out, and have a change of pace because it's tiring. Like making games is hard work. And there's been a lot of like late nights. And although we're not as bad with crunch as we used to be, particularly when we first quit our jobs, because obviously like when we quit our jobs, there was that initial panic of like, well, might have tanked my career. Let's let's see how this goes. But I've completely lost my train of thought. But that's gone. I think I've been just talking rubbish for too long.
No, it's not. It's good. It's passion, and I wanted to ask you on here because for the last few minutes, I like to dedicate it to kind of people in your footsteps or people who are looking to join. So, you mentioned when you're looking for talent, you're looking for people who are self motivated, uh, and you've already done some hires relatively quickly, I'd say. I mean, I don't know how you'd feel about that, but like you've gone from around 3, 4 to 12, and like when you're looking to hire, what decisions are you making? Because a lot of people are looking to apply for jobs in big companies, but I don't think many people have heard from like the indie studio CEO. What are they looking for? Because that might be not typical advice that they're hearing online.
No,
So
that's
what would
sorry, I
the
didn't
indie
interrupt you.
CEO like to hear from a candidate when they're looking to apply or join the company?
Yeah, no, that's a really fair point, and it's something that I didn't really know the answer to. And obviously, I can't speak on behalf of all indie studios, but I can talk about like what we value. Um, so like working for a big company is quite different than working from an indie studio, like from a variety of reasons. Like one of the ones being you'll generally specialize in one area, and you don't really sort of like if you're an artist, you don't generally go and write any code generally. But depends how big the company is. Whereas an indie, you're kind of expected like audio guys off sick. You have a little bit of experience in audio, and we ship in 2 weeks. Can you do some music, please? Like it's a little bit more chaotic like that. So there's a certain aspect of I genuinely think it needs to be people who really, really love what they do, and I mean that in a bit of a crap way, where indie studios are less stable. Like the easiest thing to do, and I say it's the easiest. Getting a job right now is tricky, and I'm not trying to like downplay how difficult the job market in the industry is, which is really, really bad. But in generally, what I mean by easier is there's a lot of churn. People can come in, come out, go in, do your job, leave, and that's downplaying the massive amounts of work that people put into these projects. And like there are people who work crazy amounts of overtime, but there is a certain aspect of like generally, although the past few years are like completely shitting on this, generally they're much more stable. They have more cohesion within inside themselves. They're generally less likely to go under, whereas like indie studios pop up and disappear constantly, like all the time. And like in Dundee, where we're from, there's a big gaming scene. There's a lot of small studios, and like the amount of studios that have popped up and just vanished is insane because it's a brutal, brutal place out there. Whereas some of the bigger companies with their like strong IPs, they are generally able to weather the storm a little bit more, but you kind of lose a little bit of autonomy in that. It's a tricky one. I think it sort of depends on the kind of person and what they want out of it. Like, do you want to be a small part in a huge machine that everyone's going to be really excited to see? Or do you want to be a really, really big part of a small machine?
Well, if you're looking to look at someone's career, right? Let's say someone's looking to apply for jobs. Let's take the example of more entry level, right?
Yeah.
Participate in a few game jams. What would you tell them? Like if you talking to that average person right now, like what advice would you give them?
I mean, I look for people who are applying to us to be like working on their own stuff. Like that's a big thing. And like I like
Can you define that for people?
yeah, oh,
Because I
sorry, I'll
feel
be a bit
like
more specific.
no. The reason I'm saying that is like I feel like from speaking to some game devs, the definition of working my own stuff, there's a massive gap into what your expectations are and then what they think is enough. So like, what do you mean by working on your own stuff? Like, what would be enough in that department?
So the big difference between like what I would look at versus like a AAA studio would be they're looking for like a laser focus on a particular thing, whereas I massively put value into like full products. Now, that's not to say someone needs to have shipped the game, but hiring a coder and in their portfolio they've also done a bunch of 3D modeling because they wanted to make this level and they wanted to make this thing and they're not very good at 3D modeling but they did a bunch of stuff themselves. Weirdly enough, that goes a long way for me. Like an artist that's willing to learn a bit of scripting, um like an audio person that can like also do some level design, like that's cool to me. It's like I personally look for generalists. I look for people that cross boundaries between disciplines because that's really important for who we are, because I never know what the needs are going to be and we always joke that we have to wear many hats. So it's like working on personal projects, showing passion and showing that you want to make games, not just parts of games, you want to make games. And I personally put a lot of weight on things like game jams. That's not the same with everyone. That's just because my background is game jams, so I always resonate. And I generally know the type of person that goes and does that because that's essentially making games for fun. Like that's basically what a game jam is. Like you learn, but like it is essentially someone saying to you, "I really enjoy doing this. I'm going to give up 2 or 3 weekends a year to stay up late at night and drink loads of coffee and make a video game." And like that is the type of person that I want to hire.
Mm.
So like that goes a long way for me. And it's not always the same. Like I know a lot of studios don't care about things like game jams and stuff, but for me and who we are and how we were built, that's a really big important thing. And most of the devs in my studio have done game jams, if not still engage with them on a regular basis. So or a semi-regular basis at this stage, I would say. Um so yeah, that's probably the biggest thing that I would look for. It does depend on the role, but like in general, that's a sort of like blanket advice that I would give, I guess.
Yeah, that documentation of the stuff they've done, and you're giving some really tactical advice. I wanted to ask you, let's say I'm really good, I enjoy going to game jams. How do I document what I've done there for it to be visible in like a 30-second? I don't know how much time you spend on CVs, but most people I talk to, it's not much longer than a minute before you kind of make a decision. So like, how do I articulate,
I
hey,
mean,
this is
that
the
is
game
a
jams I've done?
that is a very good question. Um, I
Like
mean,
the ones
generally,
you did hire, how did they present their experience, for example? Why
we
did it
actually
stand out?
we actually got very fortunate. A lot of the ones we hired actually ended up being people we worked with before. So we ended up like whenever we set up the studio, there was a bunch of people that like we knew were very good, very senior people, and they sort of saw the opportunity and like, can we come join? Um, but yeah, in regards to that, like seeing if someone says I do game jams and they have it on their CV and there's a link to somewhere that has all their game jams, I'm going to play at least one of their game jams because
Mm.
it's not common that happens. I'm a huge fan of that kind of stuff. And beyond the I need to look through a portfolio, the dev in me goes, I
I
wonder
can
what
learn a
they
lot
did.
more from doing this, and also I get to play through your CV.
Yeah, it's this kind of a thing of like, I just want to. Okay, I mean, like, I think it's kind of like a brave thing to say, like, here's a game that I've made, go look at it. But like, yeah, I'm probably will, and that's it's not great advice for like my end as regards of like it's a huge waste of time, but like it's a big passion of mine. And if someone's going to link me some stuff they've made, I might only play it for 30 seconds, might play it for 10 minutes if it's really good. I don't know, but like, yeah, if someone actually links me stuff and they actually have games to play, I'll probably give them a go. Beyond that, I mean, it's just a case of like my background's always art, so I always lean on that. And generally, the CVs like are sort of art related, but it's all to do with like the folio. Like it's all to do with what you have and showing the best bits. If you've worked on 10 game jams, cool. Don't show me the 8 crap ones. Show me the 2 cool ones that you're really proud of. You could do a little bit of a breakdown and like what you did in them specifically. And this could be something as simple as like I would think of almost like a portfolio piece, like a couple of screenshots of the game, maybe a little bit of a breakdown in the back end or what you were doing or what your specific thing is. Like I always lean towards art, so I would imagine like screenshot of the game, screenshot of the character with some technicals like the wireframe and stuff like that, and then maybe a link to the game. Like something like that enough would be enough for me to be like, that's interesting. There are other things we look into, like we need to look for fundamentals. We're a very senior team, so like we kind of assume that people applying to this are like relatively competent. Now, that's to say we have hired juniors and stuff in the past, but like we do have quite a high standard of like being able to use Unreal, being able to use blueprints to be able to like script all the sorts of things like aren't expected necessarily, but they add a lot of weight because they show a certain level of competency in regards to shipping a product that we massively value. So being able to display like what you've worked on and breaking it down to like the important things. Like here's a really good example. There was a game jam. He didn't actually apply to the studio, but he did a little breakdown, like a post mortem of the game jam, and it was just a one pager. Had a couple of images, and there was one particular problem, and it was to do with he wanted to make it look like it was like an indoor sort of hellish environment. There was like a waterfall made of lava, and he broke down how he built that and like what materials he used and what techniques he used, and it was two images in the paragraph. Super interesting. Like that's the kind of stuff that like I was instantly like, that's quite interesting. I wouldn't have done it that way, but like it was the kind of thing of I would love to see stuff like that. Just show me stuff that
Nice.
if you find it interesting and you're super passionate about games, there's a very good chance I'll find it interesting because that's the kind of stuff that I'm into. That's the kind of stuff the other people I work with are into. So I think that's the really big thing is there's a lot of the stuff comes out very, very naturally when you're very passionate about it. Um, it's a lot easier for me to say this on the other side. There's always the thing of like, are things good enough and self doubt, but realistically, just showing your stuff off, um, and not being afraid to take feedback on those as well.
Yeah,
I don't think anyone's portfolio is a good portfolio the first time they make it. Mine definitely wasn't. So
yeah, naturally. Like for everyone at home, like I was a recruiter. I did loads of CV reviews, gave advice on CVs, and then when I tried to get my first job, my CV was dreadful. And then I actually got a CV review myself, and he said, "Yeah, just this all needs to be reshuffled." I was like, "Ah, yeah." It's like sometimes you just need that third eye from someone else. The You made one point which I really wanted to double click on: the showing your thinking on the CV,
mhm.
and if it's something you find interesting, it will come through. And I just pictured you thinking, "Ah, lava waterfall guy," rather than
Yeah,
X name guy, right? Like you want something that's going to be in there and memorable. And like, yeah, I managed to get a scholarship for the university I went to study, and I knew I would get it. I was like really young. They said basically send us a video of why you deserve a scholarship. I was like, easy. I'm just gonna literally, for everyone at home, ruin my camera shop. I jumped out that window, and it's a balcony, and I said, "All right, guys, I'm just gonna go outside for some better lighting." And I jumped out my window onto the balcony, and then that was my 5-second video hook. And I then said, "You can remember me as the guy who did X."
yeah.
And then I got the scholarship. And I know for a fact, I can just imagine it happening internally. It's like, ah, this guy jumped out the window. Might as well. It's like something that's just going to grab attention,
I
whether it's a
agree.
waterfall screenshot or what have you.
It's tricky because like you're applying, and there's a lot of other people, and you're right.
Mm.
Like there's the thing of catering your applications. Like if you Googled me or Googled Aaron, you would find it pretty quickly how much we love game jams.
Yeah.
Cater it. Make sure at the top of your CV, it takes 2 seconds to edit a CV and put the top, here's the game jams I've done. Because if I open a CV and that's the top line, I'm instantly interested. That's not to say I'm hooked. It's not to say you're going to get the job, but I'm interested all of a sudden. Like you can do a wee bit of research. And I do think as well, with smaller studios, there's more individuals in it. Like a lot of bigger companies are a lot more corporate in their hiring. Like they have very, very strict policies and all this kind of stuff. With smaller studios, at least for us anyway, to me, there's a lot of like a vibe check. Like I want to hire someone that I'm going to be sitting beside. I'm not working in like a massive company where I might be hiring someone that might sit in the next building to me, or maybe I'm just literally involved in recruiting. Like, I'm just trying to fill slots, and it all has its purpose, but like that's not what we are. Like I'm hiring someone that I'm probably going to see every day because there's only 12 of us. So like I want to make sure that we're going to get on, that you're going to fit.
What are you checking for in the vibe? Because I have the same thing. Like, you want to pass the vibe check, right? But like, what is your vibe check?
I mean, a big thing is just like there's a sort of thing of like being like a douche. Like there's like sort of like thing of like there's certain people you don't get on with. We don't take ourselves super seriously all the time. I want someone that I can enjoy spending time with, but I also want someone that I know I can trust. Like it's that thing of some of my good friends are doctors, and when they're off their shifts, they are mental. They're crazy guys and they love drinking and stuff. But see, when anything happens, and we had this in a night out where like a guy tripped and fell, there's like something switches. Like they just become serious. Like it's sort of like job mode kicks in. And like those are the kind of people I want. Like I want someone that can chill out. I want someone that I can enjoy time with. But I also want someone that I know if things get
Push comes to shove,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
they
if
can
things get
dial in.
hot, like I want to know that they care, and then they have my back, and like, that's the kind of thing. But I also think as well, like, I can teach someone skills. So if we hire an artist, that's okay. We can make them a great artist. If we hire someone that I don't get on with, I can't change their personality. And I don't mean they're a bad person. I just mean like they're maybe just not right for our studio. But I'm a big proponent of like hire the person, not the skill set. The skill set is adjustable. The person is who they are, and that's a lot harder to change. I also wouldn't be comfortable with trying to change who someone was, but
I think we'll end it there with one more question, Greg. Anything you want to get off your chest to anyone watching this, potentially looking to join the industry or looking to level up themselves? Like any lessons that we think we haven't covered today?
I don't know if I'll necessarily touch on something new. But I think at the end of the day, it all boils down to what are you currently working on? And I think there's a thing of like the whole thing of you miss every shot you don't take. I get that, but some shots aren't on target. And I think there's a certain element of like make sure you're working hard, but make sure you're working smart. If you're working on something and it's not working out and you're sharing it with people and it's not engaging, why? Do postmortems on your work, review what you're doing, learn from mistakes. Don't just assume doing the same stuff over and over again will lead to greatness or improving skills. It's taking a moment, and it's important to sort of self-reflect, look at your work, whether it be a game or a piece of artwork or tools you're working on. What went well, what didn't, what would you change for next time? Because it's a stupidly competitive industry and you're now competing against a lot of very, very talented people. So you need to be passionate and creative, but you also need to be analytical and aware that you're fallible and that you can improve. I think I used to joke the day you get to the point where you make something or you work on something and you look back at it and you say, wow, I'm never going to be able to do that again, is like the start of the downfall. You should every piece or everything you should be working on should be improving in some capacity. And I don't mean entirely. There's going to be times you're going to do something that's going to go wrong. That's fine. But if you start seeing like a downward trend, why? Why are you not improving like you used to do? Um so yeah, it's hard working, but working in a smart way is my biggest sort of piece of advice around that.
And you've demonstrated that very well. Test and ship quickly. Like,
Pretty
don't
much.
wait. Right? Amazing. Greg, thanks so much. Where can people find you, get in touch if they want to bite your ear off?
I mean, I'm on Twitter. I'm Greg. We also have Team Terrible Games on, sorry, Team Terrible Dev on Twitter. You can find the Baby in Yellow on iOS, Android, and Steam. We have a Discord community and a whole bunch of other stuff. But all those things I've just listed, they are all linked together. Our community managers made sure they all backlink. So if you find one of them, you should be able to find the rest of them. If people are working on cool indie stuff and want to talk about things, I'm always interested to like hear about projects and stuff. And yeah, I hope everyone's interested or found this interesting. And yeah, it was an absolute blast being able to sit and talk to you for a while.
I appreciate it, Greg, and I definitely found it interesting. Amazing. Thank you, everyone. And yeah, those links will be in the description. Everyone at home, thanks so much. If you've come this far, consider subscribing on the apps that you're listening to this. All right, Greg, thanks so much.
Cheers.